Welcome to this latest edition of the Cranky Curmudgeon's Corner. My name is Paul Thomas, and this episode we are going to be discussing the resistance to the onslaught of the Trump administration. Joining me tonight is Lisa Boyles and Thaddeus Paul Hamas. I must note here that this is being recorded an hour or maybe 2 hours before Trump's State of the Union address to the joint session of Congress. And so my producer and I just had a conversation about the historical significance of what we are going to say tonight in terms of the resistance in lieu of what Trump is going to do regarding the change of history that is going to be promoted from what he says. With that, so the reviewers know that we are doing this the same night that Trump's doing his State of the Union to the joint session of Congress. After watching the election, the big question facing those of us who were horrified by the results became, what are we going to do now? We would like to engage in activity that prevents our descent into dystopia, but it is clearly naive to believe that unfettered, enthusiastic engagement could not be extremely dangerous. So our first question tonight, how open and public should those who want to actively participate in the resistance be? Or should our actions be concealed from the public and, more importantly, from the internet? Thaddeus, I'm going to let you start first. How secretive should we be if we are going to participate in this resistance?
Well, so far, I think we remain free to register our views with our elected representatives, whether they like them or not. So if we continue with our letters, emails, cards, text, phone calls, they will be tabulated.
Okay, well, let me interrupt there because I just want to ask this question. How effective do you think that type of engagement is? The texts, the phone calls, the letters, how effective to your representatives,
Yeah.
how effective do you feel that is?
Well, in the bluest state in the union, with mostly Democratic representatives, it's very helpful. Now, so if you're in a blue state, I recommend it because they're taking, they're kind of ticking up how many people are that interested in talking to them, and registering our views on what's going on. And I am hoping that what they're seeing, if we have a high enough number of people saying we do not like movement XYZ, then they know that that's the move that they need to take on the floor. That's kind of.
I guess my question is how effective would this motivation be on the floor if they decide to be motivated by all these letters and complaints and texts and emails and stuff?
If that probably is going to hang on the legislative talents of the individual rep or senator that we're talking about.
Okay, continue with your reading there.
Now, so far, public protest demonstrations. I don't know about you, but I have seen and heard very quiet mention. There were 50,000 people in Seattle, and there were 30,000 people in Chicago, but it doesn't seem to be ringing any alarms in Washington.
Mm-hmm.
So, whether it's safe for us to go to a demonstration and carry a sign, I don't know. it might not be all that dangerous because um, the people on the Hill are not paying attention to the demonstrators. And that comes through on the next, the next thing, uh, which is having, various congressmen and senators have had uh, local meetings with voters.
Town halls.
Town halls, thank you.
Yeah.
And where they're friendly, they seem to go okay, and they'll continue to have them. But the senators and representatives who most need to be called to task for what's going on and what they seem to be supporting in Washington are the ones who are turning tail and running and canceling their meetings because they don't want to listen to all these people who are yelling at them.
Right.
I don't think that it's that we're in danger by participating in these things. Partly because they're really not having that much effect, at least not yet.
Okay, Lisa. Thaddeus doesn't seem to think that registering your protest in whatever manner you choose isn't really all that dangerous yet. How do you feel about that?
Um, I think that's going to change. In fact, I thought I read, I don't know if it was an executive order, but he was starting to talk about um, congregates. And I'll have to look and see. I apologize. I was on vacation for 2 weeks. I just got back, so work's a little hectic. But I think you're right in the sense where right now it's not because they are kind of quiet, and also the media. You're starting to see a little bit of reflection of some of the, we'll say, sanitizing for a better word. Of we're not seeing a lot of coverage. It's mostly reels. You going through Facebook. Do you know what I mean? That kind of Instagram
Mhm.
kind of thing, TikTok that's still around. So you are seeing more there than you are in the national press. Um, Now I come from a completely red state. Uh, in fact, I had to look to see because I was so embarrassed that Miss, is it Thompson? No, from the World Wrestling Federation. She became our labor charge.
Right,
I'm
right.
sorry,
Yeah,
education, yes.
yeah. I
And
forget what
I
her name is.
read, and I was very disappointed that Our Lady, who tends to go a little middle, Lisa Murkowski, voted her in. I was very disappointed by that. But I do have to tell you, I've started, and this started about 20 years ago, maybe a little, when I moved up here and realized how everything does not align how I feel. I started supporting other candidates in other states federally because there's still that vote is going to count for everyone. So I do write to my local, and I don't think it's going to do much good. Sometimes I think Lisa hears us. The others, there's no way. They're pretty much tapped in. But especially our congressman, he's definitely he MAGA all the way. So he's not
Right,
gonna,
right.
yeah. But I think you're right. So I do support Murphy from Connecticut. I've been giving him money and writing, and because eventually that vote's going to count for all of us, not just his constituents. It's going to be all of us. So I find that's kind of a good way. Also, letting ours know how I feel. But I think you're right. Right now, it's not that big of a deal. They are ignoring these. We have seen a few, like Crockett. She's come out and actually headed up some of these demonstrations when Doge first started. So you did see some Congress people, some people, legislative people out there speaking to these crowds, but it was just, you could tell it didn't make a dent at all.
Right. They're not frightened. They're emboldened.
No,
They're not worried at all, it seems.
I think it's like, to be honest, where you saw those nationwide shutdowns, like in the other countries where that may be the only time, I that may, the bigger the better, because this guy's really full of numbers, how big things are. So maybe
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, we're going to get to that later with the retail boycott. But before we go there, I want to ask this next question. It seems that most of this country in this two-party system holds the belief that the Democratic Party is the main vehicle to ride in engaging the anti-fascist, anti-MAGA, anti-totalitarian resistance. How's that working out? Lisa, the Democratic Party is the party in opposition to this. How effective has that been?
Um, up until recently, very well, but I think as this trickle down is happening, it's really affecting the states that voted for him. You're seeing this in the ranchers and the farmers. So where are they going to go? Who are they going to turn to? Because they're very disappointed with the changes they've seen. I know people in Tennessee that have lost their job because their grant was through Save the Children, which is a part of USAID. And people believe, they've lost, and these are, in very poor towns that all voted.
Right.
And so I'm curious to see, yes, it was, that I don't think it's just going to be the Democratic Party at this point. I think we may see some hands across the aisle or leaning maybe libertarian, but are you saying that to take us out of this? Or, because I do believe in the past.
I'm just wondering how effective the Democratic Party has been as far as stopping this onslaught that we are right in the middle of now. Because personally, I don't believe that they've been very effective at all.
Me, I agree with you.
Okay,
yes, I totally agree with you. Yeah.
I see that with guys like Chuck Schumer, Durbin, Dianne Feinstein. These people have been there forever, and their interest, in my mind, is to stay in these powerful positions as opposed to really making sacrifices to help the betterment of everybody. And I think the people saw that this election and said, well, the Democrats aren't going to do anything for us, so why should we vote for them?
I think I agree with you, especially with the older crew.
Yeah.
We did see a little bit more fire in the younger people coming in.
Yeah.
And in fact, that's kind of what I look towards to see the response after that Zelensky, the sit down. And I wanted to see how they responded. And it was very much a hand slapping from Chuck Schumer, but the younger people were very vocal about it. But the older, like you said, I think the concern is just keeping their job and trying to stay in that middle.
I don't think they're effective in messaging or anything.
Nothing. Yeah.
Right. When I look at Durbin, who is the head of the judiciary, and how ineffective he was in stopping the Supreme Court whenever they just were completely corrupt, and they're resisting their code of ethics, which they weren't, it's not enforceable anyway, but completely ignoring it, with a lot of arrogance. And the only person who did anything about it was AOC, who actually filed articles of impeachment against these guys for not recusing with the Trump immunity thing when it was clear the evidence was there. Of course, it didn't go anywhere because Johnson was the speaker at the time, but at least she did that. She got up and made a speech. I'm going on too much. I'm not supposed to be giving the opinions that I'm giving. I'm just going to let you guys give the opinions. Thaddeus, the Democratic Party, how effective have they been in stopping this onslaught?
Well, how effective have they been for the last 50 years?
You tell me.
They are too polite.
Okay.
I mean, the GOP has learned how to be scrappy and warlike, and they take no prisoners. They are my way on the highway all the way down the road. And everything that the Democratic Party has done, not just in this era, but, decades before, it's as though the Democrats are afraid of upsetting the Republicans. The Republicans are basically saying, we're going to flush you guys down the commode. And they say, oh, well, let's just take a little baby step towards this. And they're not getting anywhere, because when they do that, when they come in with ultra polite, let's all be professional and polite about it, the Republicans say, that's a green light for us to just scrap everything. Let's scrap the rule of law. Let's scrap the Constitution. Let's scrap common decency. We can do whatever the heck we want, because these folks are just going to be very nice about it and stand by and let us do what we want. We really need to adopt some of their tactics. I hate to say fight fire with fire, but we need to be a little bit less polite and a little less deferential to people who are ripping our country apart. And no, they're not doing a satisfactory job. We need somebody. Actually, I was going to say we need somebody who has the scrappiness of the Vermont senator who is 100 years older than God, who isn't 100 years older than God.
Well, he's out there having rallies in these red
Yes,
states.
he is.
Yeah. So where are the people who are 40 to do the same thing?
Yeah.
If all the Democrats were out there beating a drum like he is, and like AOC is, she's the exception. She is, she's a baby, but she's out there, with her mouth open, and it's just wonderful to see. But one senator and one congresswoman, well, they need help.
Yeah, especially with being treated the way she's being treated.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she wanted to be chair of the oversight committee. Not the chair, but the leading minority person in the oversight committee. And she got dumped for like an 80-year-old Jerry Connolly from Virginia. Okay, since that awful Wednesday morning, early last November, I've been preaching the importance of maintaining good mental health. I have been in too many discussions with friends and family when I listen quietly for a long time until I finally get a chance to say, you need to calm the fuck down. I banned CNN and MSNBC from my personal viewing because I know that watching those channels will do nothing but piss me off. As we proceed through these next 4 years, there needs to be a balance between staying informed and maintaining emotional stability. I had a conversation with the producer before this, and I told him I'm not going to watch Trump's speech tonight. I just don't need that aggravation in my soul at this time. How successful have you been in finding that balance? Have you any advice to share with our viewers in staying emotionally healthy for the near future? Thaddeus?
Well, I'm fine. I'm just fine. Thank you.
I can see that.
I'm having a really rough time keeping balance on this. And when I think about it, the best thing that I can say, the best thing that I can do, is look for the commentary that is not overwrought itself. And I'll confess, I look at MSNBC, and for this mental balance, my favorite is Rachel, and my unfavorite is the guy who comes after her. Rachel will tell you what horrible things have happened, and it's just tone of voice that's a, can you believe this guy? Look what Trump did today. It's appalling. But then we get what's his name?
Lawrence. You talking about Lawrence?
Lawrence, who uses the most melodramatic language. If you ever notice, if you listen to him for a while, he never uses a reflexive pronoun for Donald Trump. He said, Donald Trump was down at Donald Trump's house in Mar-a-Lago today, and Donald Trump said, never he or him. It's always, he always says his name. It just says, this man, Lawrence, hates that guy. I mean, just personally hates him. It's not very news-like, and it's guaranteed to get people upset. You know, I'm already upset. You know, I looked at the headlines and I'm upset. So, you know, I want somebody who is going to take a step back and take a breath before they tell us about it. For that reason, you know, I like Jim Hightower's articles. He also has a kind of a bemused way of looking at these things, and I think that's because he's been around forever.
Mhm.
And one thing I'll recommend about his articles is usually at the end of them, he will say, do you want to do something about this? This organization is addressing that. You know, contact them. This is a number you can call. You know, it's not just sit there and gnaw your nails, but, you know, if you are upset about this like I am, you know, say something, open your mouth and say something, and here's where to go. And here are people who are going to get you involved if you want to be involved. So I like Jim Hightower. I don't like Ralph Nader. He's also too melodramatic. Uh,
Is he still around? I didn't
oh
even know he.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He has an article each month in the
That leftist newspaper you sent me there. Is
yeah,
that
yeah,
it? Okay.
yeah, that one. They're in there with all the good lefty comics.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Well,
so
you. How about Tom Hartman? Are you familiar with Tom Hartman?
I read him sometimes. He's in there
Yeah,
too.
he's on. Yeah, he's pretty good in that regard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but it's you know it's that I don't. I try not to engage with people on the other side too much. Uh, I do have a few minutes each day when I am more or less forced to look, at least with the sound off, at at the Nazi propaganda channel, and so
Well,
I,
there's quite a few of them out there. Nazi
well, I
pro.
mean the big one,
Okay.
faux news,
Right.
uh,
Gotcha.
and so I get it. You know, I get a taste of what they're saying. Uh, and you have to know what the other side is saying to be able to make sense of what we're saying about it. So,
Okay, Lisa. Thaddeus doesn't seem to be doing so well as far as maintaining his emotional his emotional health.
No, I fully, so I'm working full time and so I rely more on print. And it's funny you say that because I call this certain, um, I guess, certain sites I go to, I call it the holler at you news.
Right.
And I avoid the holler at you news during these kind of times because of the melodramatic. If you read into the article by the end, it's like, well, it came up, but we don't know if we're going to actually pass it. It's probably not, but it's that screamy, yelly, the world's going to cave in. And yeah. So, but I do, the New York Times is I've been really reliant on. I did cancel my Washington Post subscription, had
Well,
to go
good.
there.
Yeah,
Yep, have
I'm
not
glad to
shopped
hear
at
that.
Amazon since the inauguration. So, because I didn't realize how much, But I think I have to tell you, for me, it's just staying away from the media, the screens, and that any kind of screens. Actually, had a lovely day, and it dawned on me I hadn't looked at my phone or anything on my computer for over 24 hours. I was up at the cabin, and I do have service, so the phone is just constant. So you're getting it shoved down. Where when and I grew up, it was a half an hour at night. Maybe half hour local, half hour national. Walter Cronkite, you had the news, it was done. You know what I mean? You didn't have this constant barrage of information. But I remember I didn't look, and I listened to Motown because I know all the words, but I literally was just did not think of it. And you really do need that time. You just put it away. And I sang the songs, and sat back and thought about times I've heard that song when I was younger and dancing with my cousins and my sister, but really just getting away from it. Because this is embarrassing, but I happened to catch a live feed of that interview. When Vance and Trump sat down with Zelensky, and I actually started feeling anxious, like an anxiety attack, because and it could just be like the remembrance of bullies when I was a kid. But that gang up, I was like mortified that any president would do that, and any professional in any way, manner would do that, let alone our president and vice president.
Any decent human being would do that.
And that's what scared me, because I could feel that, whoa. And I'm thinking, I've never had the news physically affect me like that before. I mean, things here and there, not January 6th was very upsetting. And of course, other disasters that occurred, but that really was just, and then that proud bullying. And that whole machismo, that, like he said, we're just going to take it. You're not going to, we're going to take it. And so, yeah, I really think you do need, especially during these times, you do need to guard in. I think you need to just get away from any kind of source that may, and even discussion. And gosh, thank you for watching that. Because I have to shut it off. I can't. I can't. That upsets me more. You're like,
yeah,
you
I can't do that
with the TV. Yeah.
And I never
they
could.
don't like facts.
Okay, since Citizens United opened the floodgates to the infusion of unlimited money into the political processes, both parties have embraced its utilization, and presidential campaigns are now a billion-dollar industry. Both campaigns spent over $1 billion each. Kamala's campaign had more than enough cash to deliver her message, which leads me to ask, is money all that important, or is it overrated? It seemed like they had enough money to deliver the message, and it was clear what Trump is, and it was pretty clear what Kamala represented. So it still went Trump's way. Lisa, are you seeing what I'm seeing? That money really wasn't the issue in the campaign. It was just like the American people decided that they liked the bully and they didn't like the decent woman.
Yeah, I really feel sad that it's become that way in America, because a lot of other countries it's not like that. Of course, you have more than two candidates, for elections in a lot of other countries. But anyway, I don't think it was the money. I think the biggest thing, and I mean, I'm not going to blame that, because there's a lot of issues, but I do think that the primary was the lack of time, the timing. There wasn't much time for her to get her message out and to make people comfortable with her. I happen to listen a lot to the younger, I don't know what to say now. I don't know what generation they have given it, what alpha numeric, whatever, but then generations. But there was a lot of non-voting. I noticed among some of the young people that just didn't like either candidate and just decided not to vote. A big thing with the Democrats in this election too was the view of the war over in Gaza and the Palestinian genocide is what they were calling it. And it was interesting how the 20-somethings, it just really flew through their universe. And yeah, voting for Biden, voting for Kamala was supporting the genocide of Palestinians. So, but I think you're right. Money, it's a joke the way it's become so expensive to run. We probably would have a lot better candidates if it wasn't so expensive, because it's who's going to get the money. And I think they weren't comfortable with her. She was new. We didn't know much, I mean, I loved hearing her speak when I did some research on her past presentations when she was the district attorney in California, and was to her speak. But I don't think anyone took the time to do that. And I don't think there was.
I think people got the idea of what she was about. I like her a lot.
Yeah.
I thought she was a great candidate. I thought she delivered a good message. I thought she gave some good proposals about some of the problems we have in America, like the housing, young people trying to get a house, and it just did not land.
No, it didn't.
And Trump's bullying did. And I don't think money had anything to do with it. I think it was
Yeah,
clear.
me neither.
It was
I know
clear.
didn't she have record levels when she first announced?
Oh yeah, yeah. She had
Yeah.
plenty of dough. What upset me about the whole thing was every day I'd get emails and text messages, not only from her, but from all the congressional candidates and the senatorial candidates trying to get reelected. John Tester in Montana. They asked me for money. They kept asking me for money, and I just like, I wasn't, the problem I did was I bought one of her signs from her campaign, a yard sign, or Harris Walls, and that put me on the list. And so I was bombarded. And by the time we got towards the end, I was pretty worn down. By the only thing they cared about me was how much money I was going to give them, and that's all. All the communication to me was about that.
Yeah.
So Thaddeus, is money basically a moot point at this stage? Because the messages were pretty clear in my mind, and the people didn't really care who had the most money as much as they cared about what represented them, the hate or the love.
Yeah. So of course, I've been saying that money's overrated for decades. Um, and, it is true still that 99% of the time, the big spender is going to be the winner. But this time, it seems like, those two budgets were pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
And the messages were, pretty close in their concentration, but very different in in the audiences that they landed with. And I think we got blindsided by, a message landing with people that we didn't expect it to land with. Um,
What group is that?
that would be the young white men.
Okay.
It's really kind of disappointing. It does look like there were a lot of men who voted for Trump because they did not want to have a female president, no matter who it was. So it sort of like they used to say in Jim Crow days, better the worst white man than the best black man. And this is better the worst man than the best woman.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we got on this. Um, I've had a radical idea about changing the way we finance uh, politics. And of course, number one is to get a law that negates Citizens United. We've got to bring back the illegality of unlimited money,
Right.
because that is the essence of oligarchy. The money people run the place. And I would go a step farther, and I know I'm going to get a lot of argument about it, but I have said that a candidate should not take any money from anyone who's not going to see their name on their ballot. You understand?
No.
Okay.
Clarify.
If I am running for your district, the only people I can take money from are voters in your district.
Oh, the people who can vote for me.
Yeah, people who can
So
vote
if you're
for me.
running for Senate in a state, the only money you can get is from that state.
The only office for which you can collect money from everybody from coast to coast would be the president.
Mm-hmm.
And that says that we can't allow any money from corporations, organizations, PACs, super PACs. Nobody can give money to a campaign. Only voters. So a campaign is strictly financed by the voters who are going to vote for that candidate. It should be fairer because, in a rich district, okay, lots of rich people are going to be giving lots of money to their candidates on both sides. And in a poor district where there aren't very many rich people, they're going to have a much more cut rate campaign. But the same goes, for both parties or for independents. You can only get money from people who can vote for you.
I think that's a good idea.
It's a good idea. I know, where, 5 or 6 really big, hot arguments are going to arise from getting there, but I think that it's worth discussing.
Right. Do you believe, as I do, that no movement has even a tiny chance of success unless there is visible leadership in the person with strong charismatic attributes? After you tell me if you have identified an individual with those qualifications, I'll share with you my choice for the job. I think we already mentioned the guy from Vermont and the congresswoman from the Bronx. So, Thaddeus, who's your choice to lead this movement?
Well, first of all, up until Biden, I would have agreed with your premise completely. But Joe Biden, in his 4 years as president, was quiet and slow talking and sleepy looking. And you look at the list of stuff that he got done, which, beat out just about everybody since FDR. So he got stuff done without being the great charismatic leader.
I'm talking about a movement.
Mm-hmm. And we do, I am waiting with bated breath to hear who your suggestion is, because, AOC is too young, Bernie is too old, but we need somebody with that kind of fire, because it does take that kind of fire to get a campaign going, to get people on their feet, to get people running to the polls. We kind of got Biden because, well, there's nobody else going at the time. But
I'll tell you what. How I think we ended up with Biden. People saw what happened, especially the black women saw what happened to Hillary, and they realized that the only way they were going to beat Trump was to have another old white man, and Biden happened to fill that. And it took that South Carolina primary, which I forget the guy down there, the congressman down there, and the black women made the decision that the only way we can beat Trump at this point is with another old white man. And so even though Biden wasn't the most charismatic guy at the time, he was the one that they chose, and that's what happened, and he ended up beating them. That's how I think Biden won. But we're at the point now where we need a movement, and we need a charismatic leader of the movement. One like Martin Luther King was. He was a charismatic leader. Malcolm X was a charismatic leader of a movement. And I believe that we need one. And I'm not going to tell you mine yet because I'm going to let Lisa tell us who hers is before I come up with mine. Okay,
well,
Lisa?
It's interesting because I think, I had a hard time coming up with one person because I looked at too many things, which was my fault. I looked at too many angles. Oh, geez, well, this is more for climate, and this is more for stewardship, and this, so what to get them together. But I think it's going to have to be someone like we do need someone younger because that is the vote. There's a big chunk of people out there, the millennials down, you know what I mean? Where AOC, they listen to her. Mm-hmm. She's a big part of their TikTok viewage. She does Instagram, you know what I mean? So we do need someone, but I would like to see a combination of the two to get the two get the older and the younger, you know. But it's going to have to be someone, I think, fiery, like you said. I think you're right. We need to change that view of the Democrats just constantly rolling over and being non-confrontational. And I mean, sad because a lot of it's based in intellect and knowledge. But we do tend to be like, well, okay, I'm not going to fight with you. You know, it's not worth it. And yeah, or it's worth it, but you know, I don't want the challenge, the anger and but I think it needs to be someone fiery. And I hope you have a good one, Paul, because I've been looking. I have been definitely looking. And in what direction do I want to go? Because unfortunately, it's a dumpster fire. So there's a lot of things to look at here. And how would you do this?
Not surprisingly, it's AOC. And the reason I think it's her is because of the times I've listened to her talk on podcasts and be interviewed. She always seems to have in her heart, and it comes out, caring for the people who need help. Yeah. And she's able to articulate that so well. And I think the sincerity of that caring is what is really going to carry the day with her. Now, what I'd like to see in 2028 is a brutal Democratic primary where she is one of the candidates and they have all these battles. You know, you have your establishment person. I don't know who that's going to be, Gavin Newsom or whoever. And then you have the voters come out and they listen and they end up getting her enough delegates to get the nomination, you know, by the skin of her teeth. But by that time, I think the momentum and the galvanization, we need a woman. We need a woman so bad because the men have screwed it up so horribly that, and I know that the conventional wisdom is that no women can possibly win. But I think that she has the fire in her belly. And another name I'd like to throw out is Jasmine Crockett from Texas. She's another one that I think is just not intimidated at all, and she knows what's right, and she's not afraid to say what's right, and she stands up to these knuckleheads on the House floor in those committee meetings. So those are two names I'd like to throw out. So.
And I have to agree with you because those are two of the people, like I mentioned early on, that have showed up at USAID. They were outside the door, let us in. You know what I mean? I believe it was Jasmine. Mm-hmm. But I mean, you'd see them with the people on the streets, you know, and going back to, like you said, you know, walking the beat, you know, being a part of the people. If it's like with you talked about local politics, that is about how it should just be people who can vote for you, you know, which would make that kind of a campaign where you have to knock on door to door and get to know your constituents. Yeah. And their needs and seeing their needs, you know, seeing how they live. This is what this is the home they live in. This is what they have. And that, you know, but yeah, I'm with you. I think, and those are those are the younger people you've seen out there so far.
Yeah.
And Thaddeus, you made mention earlier about the Democrats are too nice.
Yeah.
And Biden was one of those nice Democrats.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything more to say about this particular issue before I move on?
Can I throw in just one more minor name into the pot?
It's not going to be minor if you throw them in.
Katie Porter.
Is she still a congresswoman?
I don't know whether she's still a congresswoman or whether she gave up her seat to run for the Senate and didn't win.
I know she ran for the Senate and didn't win, but I don't know if she ended up losing her seat because of it.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Katie Porter, she is a firebrand.
She is the sweetest little barracuda you ever saw in a committee meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, she's tough.
Yeah.
Okay, history has shown that great social change is generally met along the way with lethal violence. Countless beheadings occurred during the French Revolution. Recent estimates say that it took over 850,000 deaths before slavery was officially abolished in America. Articulate, charismatic leaders such as Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, and Martin Luther King Jr. were all gunned down in the 60s as the civil rights movement was just gaining momentum. The recently released J6 pardonees are already retrieving their weapons with an added boost of ideological adrenaline. How worried should we be that any progress achieved by the resistance will be met with lethal violence? Lisa, we said earlier that we're not really worried quite yet because it's early in the game. But if this thing moves ahead as far as the resistance starts gaining momentum and Trump seems to be losing popularity and that becomes apparent, do you think that violence could be part of what the resistance faces as
Oh,
this thing moves on?
for sure. It's unfortunate because, and it might not be gobs of people. It might just be a small group, but that is definitely the last resort, and we've seen it happen. You know, Charlottesville, that was not a big, huge. I mean, it was a rally, but you know, there's just pockets like the people at January 6th. They don't care. They don't care. So you will have people. That one boy that gosh, and I'm so bad with names where he shot the protester and he said it was in self-defense when it wasn't.
Rittenhouse.
Yes, yeah, thank you. So I do think there's going to be that, hopefully not government instructed, but I could kind of foresee that down the road. But not right now, which is where we have to get going right now before that ball gathers steam, because there are people out there, the vigilantes that feel that they're right, and they're gonna, you know what I mean? This is done for the greater good in their minds. And
they're not locked loaded yet because they don't consider us going to be successful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Thaddeus, are you afraid that as this thing gathers steam, that it will be met with violence?
I think that in many cases it might be unavoidable. One of the things that I had in some earlier comments that I missed, because I don't read my own handwriting very well, was that while I would applaud a well-executed assassination or two,
careful now.
If there were one, it very likely would tip off a civil war. Mm-hmm. Now, if that sounds far-fetched, here's something that's even more far-fetched, if you'll give me a couple of minutes.
Go ahead.
A half a century ago, I had a series of nightmares in which America was at war. That is, you know, planes, tanks, troops marching down your street, factories shuttered, airports and railways bombed out. You know, that's that sort of war. You know, you don't know whether you're going to get shot if you walk out your front door, that sort of thing. And in these dreams, I was too old to fight and too old to cope with things like supply chain problems in the drug industry and not being able to get medications that I rely on to stay alive. And I find myself 50 years later having the same nightmares, except I'm not asleep. I am petrified that this is going to lead to bloody violence. And it's not just a matter of, you know, a few people getting killed here or a few people there. It's going to be somebody is going to sick the United States military on American people. And American people with our 400 million unregulated, privately owned firearms are going to be carrying them. It can get very ugly, and it can get very ugly very fast. So, yeah, I'm very much afraid.
So I guess we have a consensus to this question. We discussed this earlier, but are there any media platforms that you know that where you could recommend resistance aspirants wherever they can go for guidance and direction on how to proceed? I guess Jim Hightower was your guy, Thaddeus, right?
Yeah.
Any other ones besides that you
Well,
feel?
there's one that Mike looked into and has uh, gotten in touch with, and I have their manifesto sitting next to me, and I haven't read it yet. But the organization is called Indivisible.
Oh yeah,
I have heard a couple of good reviews on the news about efforts that they have taken since the inauguration to stand up to the horrors that are being inflicted on us. So that's one. I wish that I had a half dozen more because I know that there are a lot of people out there who care about what happens and are worried about their fellow citizens.
okay. I want to ask you a favor because I went to the Indivisible website to
Yeah,
try to connect with them, and
yeah.
I could not see a phone number or even the ability to send an email. So I want you to get Mike to send me that information. Not here, not now. Later on
Yeah,
after the
I
show.
was just looking if there's something on the title page of this, and I don't see anything. So
See, yeah, that was the
yeah, I'll,
difficult
get,
half out. But
I'll ask I'll ask Mike to get back to you.
he's good at that stuff, so
Yeah.
he may be able to get me connected. Okay, Lisa, is there anything that you look to that you think is good as far as talking about the resistance, ways in which we can do something, and this would help us get involved?
And I was going to say Indivisible too, only as a trusted platform, but I'm really still looking, Paul, because like for me, it's been such craziness so fast that I tend to kind of like if I'm going to go all out, I'm going to go all out. And do I do it for women's rights? You know what I mean? Or do I focus on like constitutional? You know what I mean? That issues with that. So I'm still kind of looking. It's sad because it's like every day is something new, and I kind of, my daughter and I talked, and she said I kind of need to hand over the women's rights things because unfortunately a lot of it doesn't apply to me anymore, but I'm still doing it for my daughters and granddaughters, you
Well,
know
sure, it still applies because you care about the people you love. That's so
that's it.
that really applies. Yeah.
So for that, it would, we were trying to work with the National Organization for Women, but these and Planned Parenthood helping them out,
Mm-hmm.
which by the way, if I'm not on our PFD, they're no longer included in the Click Pick Give. So things are suddenly happening that, yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
heard that too. Yeah.
so those are, but that's for me personally. But as far as he goes, yeah, I think it's good. That's a good way to look at even just a starting point, and then or follow that structure of Indivisible because they've been around. They've got a solid reputation because there are so many things, and it's so easy now with the way communication goes to have nine different little groups, and you don't even know where that money's going. You want to
Actually,
make sure,
thousands.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there's so many
yeah,
different issues. There's climate change. There's women's
yeah,
issues. There's constitutional issues. There's immigration issues. I mean, there's just
yeah.
so many different organizations, and you just don't know what to do. And so, I kind of like the idea of Indivisible being the good starting point there.
And gathering us together. I mean, it's a common cause here,
Right.
and
Right.
then we need to work together, and that'll be greater numbers. So yeah,
And it seemed like a lot of people were relying on that umbrella being the Democratic Party, but I've really lost confidence in that umbrella. I just don't see it. Okay.
yeah.
Although I am personally committed to resist Trump's MAGA effort to destroy any person or institution not completely dedicated loyal to him, I don't know yet the best way to develop that commitment. Watching the destruction of government institutions designed to help people is pretty disheartening, but doing something stupid or futile doesn't make any sense. My strategy at this moment, this is just personally how I'm going to engage with people, is to see if there is enough chaos and destruction for the people who actually voted for Trump to realize that they are actually being hurt by the crisis, and then trying to explain how it is happening. What is your strategy for participation? See, I'm talking about people we encounter and how we communicate to them. And I don't want to belittle or condescend or be, angry and try to put them down. But if they see something that is awful, and if I can explain to them that, well, this reason this is awful for you now is because Trump actually did this. For instance, the price of automobiles now, because he just imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian auto parts that are coming into this country. That's my strategy. That's how I want to go about. And that's all I know so far. So, Lisa, do you have any ideas on how to engage the people you interact with?
Definitely. Like we started out, we talked about how my friend in Tennessee, losing her job because she's with Save the Children, which is being in America, but it's part of USAID. Doge closed that, stopped all that. So,
did she vote for Trump? Was she a Trump supporter?
No, but she lives in a Trump heavy area. And so she's been talking to, and I say, you need to share that information. I think I'm a little bit, part of me is like you sit back and watch the internal destruction, kind of implosion I think is going to happen. But I do know, like, keeping abreast of on social media, you are hearing a lot of regret. You are starting to hear regret for their decisions because, like I said, the ranchers now are upset because, that I don't even know the percentage of their employees were undocumented workers. They're leaving. There's talks of truckers not having full containers when it comes to moving fruit and vegetables. They're leaving. They're not showing up for work. So, which is, they're cheap labor. I mean, I don't even have to get into that. I'm sure everybody understands. But
I remember living in Alaska, doing produce shopping in wintertime, and every one of those tomatoes or whatever fruit that I'd buy there had Mexico.
Yep.
And every bit of it, they would fly it up from Mexico to Alaska, and that's how we had our fruits and vegetables in the winter.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's
sorry,
going to be,
I interrupted you. Go ahead.
Oh no, but I think it's just going to be, explaining that as it hurt. I do not want to be the I told you so kind, because these are the people that we're going to need to help change things, to kind of spread the word. But definitely learning to have that civil conversation. Well, where do you think this came from? A lot of them have realized, and they'll flat out say, what were we thinking? How did we not think this was going to not touch us? I mean, day 2 in office, people couldn't use their SNAP cards.
Right. Yeah.
So
what are they going to tell their kids? Sorry, kids, we're not having supper tonight because my SNAP card was declined.
Yep.
Yeah. All right, Thaddeus, you said the Democrats were too nice, but you're nice.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to be able to engage? Now, you had said earlier that you really don't talk to those people too much. You try to avoid getting in conversations. But
well, as Lisa was saying, there are people around me that eventually are going to get affected by this. And all I can think is, I want to be ready when they show up to give them, as much compassion as I can dredge up and say, okay, what can we do together to try to change this? Not just say, oh, well, you were stupid to vote for Trump or anything like that. Or say, okay, well, this is what we got. And honestly, okay, you voted for Trump. He talked a good game and then he betrayed us. That's, I think it's part of his business plan, but but
But you still have to give that message in some fashion.
yeah,
Otherwise, they'll still be in a fog and vote for, whoever in 2028. They'll continue
yeah.
to vote,
But say this is where we at. You know, he betrayed us. We have to do something to counter it. We have to do something to dig ourselves out of the situation. Can we put our heads together? That's how I come across as super nice without and tell somebody that they're as stupid as dog dirt without actually saying you're stupid as dog dirt.
try to say you're stupid as dog dirt nicely.
Yes, like telling somebody to go to hell in such a way that he is looking forward to the trip.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. This next question is about some actual manifestations of resistance. And this is in the area of retail vendor. On Super Bowl Sunday, I received a text from a member of one of those many text groups that receives this podcast on a regular basis. This message contained a banner addressing an organizational effort to boycott the February 28th selected retail vendors who are going along with Trump's effort to eliminate DEI policy. So we're already several days past that. I found out later that the organization behind the February 28th action is called the People's Union. After that, I received a text from another podcast recipient that another organization called Shutdown 315 is planning on a selected boycott on March 15th. There's a couple things that come to my mind. First, the recent auto workers strike utilized secretive walkouts at randomly selected manufacturing plants to great effect. They got a really good contract from the auto industry. The second is the Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott, which started on my third birthday by Rosa Parks when she decided not to give up her seat in 1955. That boycott ended a year later when the city buses were officially desegregated. It was a fluid organizational achievement that created many different transportational alternatives needed by the boycott participants to get around. They had jitneys, they had reduced rates from the cab drivers, from the cab companies. All this was going on while the white supremacist government authorities imposed draconian local ordinances to publish the participants. One of the things they did was they made an ordinance that said you can't charge less than 45 cents for a taxi ride, when they were given these taxi rides for 15 cents so they could get these people around Montgomery without using the buses. I see possibilities with these methods of resistance. My question is our networking as effective as what we saw in Montgomery in 1956? Is our will to resist injustice as strong as what they have? Do we have the necessary attention span to see it through to fruition? What do you think, Mr. Paul Hamas?
There are some facets of it that are better and some that are worse. When I looked at Montgomery, I thought, well, that really was good. I mean, they really had their act together, and they got success. It took them a year. That's not bad.
That's pretty good, a year, considering
Yeah.
Jim Crow was over 80 years old at the time.
But that was one city.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about 330 million souls that we're shooting things out to. I've got serious doubts about how we can get that message out. On the other hand, this is now 2025 and not 1955. And we've got a whole lot better means of instant communication, with, we've got Instagram and, Facebook and X, or of course X they probably won't let you get through with, but You know,
Well, this particular message did get around the
yeah.
internet pretty well.
Mhm.
You heard about it. A lot of people that I brought it to their attention already knew about it before I brought it to their attention. Um, so, what do you think? You think that
Well, the word got out. What I'm waiting for is for the word to get out on how successful that effort was. You know,
the data is not in yet? The data is not
yeah,
in
the
yet.
data is not in yet. Now, you saw about the 315. I saw that one. I also saw a list of 4 or 5 other actions that other organizations are putting forth in the same way. Um, if we have a whole row of these, and perhaps if they have increasing success as we go along, we get more. Hey, we did well on this. Let's make sure we get everybody we know involved in this next one. That could snowball.
It seems to me, though, before I go to Lisa on this, that there has to be some kind of coordination that sends the messaging out. That without that, people are just going to, I tried that once, but I have to go shopping today. I need my groceries. Um, and I don't see that has really come to light at this time. It may, and it could be that Indivisible may have a role in that, but I really think that's kind of the challenge. Okay, Lisa, how do you see all this retail boycotting thing playing out as far as developing effective resistance?
I think it's starting off well. I mean, a lot of people heard about it. A lot of people in my world did not shop any on the 28th. I wonder if we'll get the true statistics too. Who knows in that regard. But I think you're right, though. We need a thread to bring bring it all together because, like you, I got a bunch of different dates, and I'm and there's certain like 315 for this one and 3 something for this one, and yeah, all these, and so which is a totally different group. So I think we need to bring it together, but I think that's the best. I think that kind of the secretive part is hard though because of um, unfortunately, this young generation doesn't know the value of face-to-face conversation and having it be a secret. Do you see what I mean? I think that's completely lost on them, that part, because everything is shared either via text, like you said, Instagram or X or whatever media they use for instant messaging like that, or getting a message out. And
Well,
so
that was just an example of what the auto workers did in order to get in order to keep the manufacturers, the car companies off balance. Um,
but that couldn't have been, I mean, honestly, that had to be pretty down low for it not to,
for them not
because
to find out.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of what I think, and going along with your joke about, attention span too, but it is hard to kind of keep, and like Montgomery, of course, and you think about how secretive they had to be just to meet up to talk about it,
Right.
because a lot of people would get upset if they saw, unless it was church, a group of yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
they were bombing churches back in those days.
Yes.
They were,
Yeah, because that's where they would gather, and they didn't want people gathering like that. That was fearful for them. They were afraid of that. So I think I like that kind of. I really do like to hit them in the guillons with money. Money is talks, and stopping to spend, talking to your neighbor. I got friends at work here that have chickens. I get my eggs there. You know what I mean? Like, start realizing, do I need this or do I just want this? Because there's a lot we can change. Living in Alaska, it's funny to hear people complain, and I'm thinking, didn't it take you months to get something from Montgomery Ward? You know, like, 30, 40 years ago, and now they're used to going on the shelf and there's milk and there's cheese and it's like, and then we had a couple of problems where the supply wasn't there, and I'm thinking, well, I remember growing up, and if we had no milk, we had no milk for that day. We were
Yeah,
never going to
so
never get
spoiled
milk
now.
again.
We are so spoiled now.
So I'm with you. I think that if we took some time and really, like years ago, they talked about everyone not buying gas for one day and what a dent that would make. and I got excited about that. Like, wow, imagine if just one day nobody pumped gas, no one bought gas. So I
So what
like that.
happened with that? Do you remember if that had any effect?
No, I just think it didn't happen, but they were talking about just, using statistics and the average, how much people buy, blah, 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 this is what it costs. This is the message. And it was astronomical.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm with you. I think that getting them, when it comes to money, that's where they really feel it. When
Right.
we take that out of the purse. Yeah. And yeah, and I do worry about pharmaceuticals. When you talked about that earlier too, getting, you up here, I've really told it's the first time and I was so embarrassed. But when things started going nuts in January, I just said to my husband, I said, do we have extra gas at the cabin? Because we have solar power. Everything's paid for. I was really starting to think that apocalyptic thought of, do we have canned foods up there? I mean, and
Go
I
back to
never
the
felt that in my life.
Y2K days when everybody was afraid.
Yes.
Yeah, we weren't going to get any water. We ain't going to get any electricity because there was only 2
It was
digits.
the thing, yeah. And I'm 61 and I'm thinking that, and I didn't even feel it then because, I
Yeah.
knew it's just a number. It's just going to
Right.
switch to zero and everything's going to be fine. But yeah, it's interesting. But I wish we do have someone to bring it all together. Your questions are going along nice because that does intersect with your question saying, who can bring this together? Who can take all these different groups? Because each group has a different group of viewers. Say, like that, you got that other Instagram, that person has a different set of viewers. How do we get it all together?
That's the challenge.
Yeah.
And this last question goes right to that. Remember Occupy Wall Street, the college protests of the Israeli army's treatment of innocent Palestinians in Gaza? Why did those movements fail? I'm going to tell you, Lisa, put on your historian's hat there and tell me why those movements, which had, good Occupy Wall Street, man, that thing had momentum. People were really upset because Wall Street is taking all the money and we're left with nothing.
Oh, so you're talking about the 1% versus the 99%?
Yeah, that was
Yeah,
part of it.
that was the, yeah.
Messaging. Yeah.
We're in a big mess when it comes to talking about Israel and Gaza right now. That's a big mess. It's hard to understand because you definitely have right now. I think we have conflicting and opposing. The younger people and the older people are not agreeing in America how to go with that. Older people are leaning more towards the anti-Semitism. The younger people worry about the Palestinians. That's something but the 1% is that it really started, but I think the message wasn't clear enough. I happened to read a Mother Jones article years ago, and they talked about the wealth of Americans. And when they talked about that 1%, they weren't joking when they said they'd have to have a fold out that would reach the moon, because that difference from the higher end of earners in America to that 1% was just so great. So I think that hit home with me. But I think, like you said, that the 1% Occupy Wall Street, I think the message wasn't clear as to what Joe Schmo in the streets didn't get it. They didn't understand it. They just saw him as a bunch of hippies camping in the streets. Yeah.
Right. All right, Thaddeus. My producer just sent me a text. He wants to go listen to Trump's State of the State address. So he wants us to wrap this thing up. So why did Occupy Wall Street and the Gaza Palestinian college protest end so miserably?
Well, I thought just technically Occupy Wall Street went on for a while, and it seemed to, at least the way it was portrayed to us in public on the legacy media, seemed to it seemed to go out of focus, and it was just people, hanging around Wall Street for, no longer any apparent reason. It was just there. Uh, for With the Palestinians in Gaza, um, I, you know, I feel very badly that our country has, our officialdom has thrown in their lot with the Israelis to such an extent that it walls out the Palestinians. And when Trump can get up and say, "Oh, well, we're just going to move all the Palestinians out and turn the disputed land into a golf course," and I thought, wait a minute, aren't they the people who were there before the Allies decided that that was the geographical area where Jews were going to settle after World War II? And it was historically the Jews' country. But, forgive me for being one-sided about it, but it seems like ever since the Jews moved in to that area, they have been trying to get the Arabs to leave. And so it has been a war since 1947.
Right.
Won't ever be anything but a war unless the last Palestinian non-Jew has been driven out or killed. And there are so many people who, well, for good reason disagree with that, but some of them just don't see it. And I feel terrible about that. But I guess, why did these movements fail miserably? Well, part of it is I think the public has sort of demonstration fatigue. And, I think that's one of the reasons why the media are not covering all of the, the hundreds of demonstrations that there have been around the country in the last 6 weeks. Because they know, the TV producers know that their audience is fatigued of looking at people carrying signs. So they don't have as much clout as they might have in an earlier day.
I agree with both of your assessments, but my belief is the main reason why Occupy Wall Street failed, and as also with this Palestinian protest, was a lack of leadership and the unwillingness of the protesters to accept leadership, or the absence of leadership not emerging at that point. Anyway, I want to thank you both for what a very solid discussion on what we have in front of us. And I don't think any of us have the answers really to how things are going to play out, because we don't have the prophecy in front of us. So we're just going to have to see what happens, go from there, stay fluid like they did down in Montgomery, and see what we can do in order to keep this country from becoming an authoritarian dictatorship. Lisa, Thaddeus, thanks so much. And all you out there in Cyberland, thanks for listening, and we'll see you. Bye now.